What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another video. And in today's video, we're talking about another undrafted free agent signing the Detroit Lions made this offseason. In today's video, we're talking about Jeremiah Dinson, the safety out of Auburn. So let's get it started. Welcome into another video, guys. I'm glad you guys are here. And today we're talking about Jeremiah Dinson. In our last undrafted video, we talked about Jalen Elliott, the safety out of Notre Dame. If you guys want to see the series continue, make sure you just support the heck out of it. And also comment below the next player we should talk about next. And let me know your thoughts on the player that we are discussing in today's video. So today we're talking about Jeremiah Dinson. And undrafted free agents deserve love too. And that's why we started this series. So I love it. So I hope the support is there so this can continue. Jeremiah Dinson is a very interesting player. And it's kind of crazy to think that he ended up with the Detroit Lions after his career nearly ended over 4 years ago. Just over 4 years ago, this guy had to deal with a crazy blindside hit against Texas A&M, which nearly ended his career. It tore all of his ligaments in his right knee. It actually dislocated his right knee, actually dislocated his left shoulder. Apparently, he was numb at the time, and it looked like his career could have ended before it really actually had an opportunity to start with Auburn. No 2016 season, a slow start to his career, but all of a sudden in 2018, he started to pick it up, and he started to look like the player that Auburn actually recruited. And then all of a sudden in 2019, he took his abilities to the next level, and he became a player that actually made sense for, hey, this guy could actually get drafted. Now, he didn't get drafted, he got signed by the Lions, which, by the way, I will say, Jeremiah, that's a good thing. You're in the right place. That's where you want to be. I did see some similarities with him and Jalen Elliott, right? They're both pretty unathletic. I'm just going to throw that out there, right? That's one of the biggest cons, and that's a big reason why a lot of people fall off, because if you're not super athletic, people look at you like, oh, yeah, you know, hey, but that's what I'm looking for. I want someone that pops off my screen, someone that does all these crazy things and does them really well. And that's fine and all, but that's usually a reason why you fall down the draft board. And in the case of Jalen Elliott and in the case of Jeremiah Dinson, that's a huge reason they went undrafted. They're just not athletic players. They're slow. They look slow on the field when you watch them. They grade out really slow. They have a slow 40 time. Their agility's poor. They're not very big in size. In their screen, you're like, well, that guy's really big. You know, I can play him in a different spot. I can play him like a linebacker. But he's also not super fast, so he's not like, oh, watch that guy run around. It's just not that. He doesn't do that. But if you watch him, you can see how fundamentally sound both of these players are. And Jeremiah Dinson is as well. In the last video where we talked about Jalen Elliott, I talked about how Matt Patricia loves his fundamentals. And he wants guys that gets the job done. He said it has no problem with the scheme. It's all about the fundamentals. And we need to be more fundamentally sound. And that's what the Detroit Lions are absolutely looking for when they sign these players. That's what they've looked for. And that's what they look for again. It's making sense to me now. That's what I saw with Jalen Elliott. That's what I'm seeing with Jeremiah Dinson. This may be the most pure tackler I've seen in a long time. I'm not even lying. This guy went undrafted, and I'm not just hyping him up. This guy can tackle. Like, he's not running through people, right? He's really small. His size isn't great. 6 foot 190. We talked about a guy in Jalen Elliott, and I was like, well, you know, if he had to move to the linebacker position, he had to put on a little bit of pounds, but he weighed 210. All right. Jeremiah Dinson weighs 190. He's basically like a cornerback. I mean, he's got like a cornerback size, but like a slot corner size. But he tackles so well. I don't know what it is. This guy is so consistently good at making tackles. Not a lot of broken tackles. He fills the lanes really, really well. He tackles every player. Even if they're really quick, he'll bring them down. It's just something about him. And it's always a good wrap-up, right? It's not just, oh, I just pounded into him and I fell off. That's something we saw when we looked at Jalen Elliott, but that's something you see when you look at Jeremiah Dinson. And some people say, oh, we're just hyping him up. But the numbers can actually back it up. And the reason I say that is because last season he had 88 total tackles. Xavier McKinney had 95, who was probably the best safety in this draft. He was number 4 in the SEC in solo tackles. Those numbers are great. Then go watch him. I mean, constantly against whatever matchup, he's bringing the player down. You know, he'll get in on a stop. He'll do it by himself. He'll do whatever he has to do. He'll blitz. He's just a really good tackler. I mean, I really don't know how to explain it. He's a secure tackler, consistently bringing the player down, whoever has the football. And that's his calling card. That's what he does. And it may not seem that exciting, and it's like, oh, he's good at tackling. Like, okay, that's cool. But that's what he does at a high level. And I'm assuming that's the one thing that Lions looked at and said, wow, that's really good. That's really good. I mean, if he's out there, he's going to consistently make tackles. You know, he's not going to make big mistakes in the back end. That's someone we can rely upon. That's a secure tackler that we can bring in. That's exactly what he does. And that can be great on special teams, by the way. Let me just say that. So we know he's a great tackler. But what about his coverage ability? Because at the end of the day, he was a safety for Auburn. What about his coverage ability? Now, like I said with the athleticism, he's not the most athletic player, so I don't think you want to throw him out there as a corner, and I think that's why he was way more successful as a safety. You don't want to throw him out there as a corner and be like, all right, go against a wide receiver. He's still a secondary player, and he has enough athletic ability to take on tight ends and running backs in man-to-man and in zone. He's a solid zone player, but you put him man-to-man against a tight end, he won't take him out of the game, but he'll be really successful. Even though he's not the biggest player, he's only 6 foot. You go watch him against LSU where he takes on about Thaddeus Moss. Sure, he doesn't take him out of the game, but he does really, really well against him. And I was going to watch that game and I was saying, okay, this could be bad because, you know, the size isn't there. He might get dominated by a tight end. He didn't. He stuck with him. He was really close to him. He kind of sealed off really any opportunity to get the ball to the tight end. He really took him away. He took away tight ends consistently, and that's something that he does well. Now, in the back end, as a coverage safety, he's pretty good as well. I'll just throw this number at you. He graded out as the top safety according to Pro Football Focus. I believe that was in 2018, but he was also above Xavier McKinney. So, yeah, if that doesn't tell you how good of a coverage guy he is, I don't know what will. And you don't want to man this guy up against a wide receiver because that's just going to be a mismatch. The good thing is the Lions don't blitz a ton anyways. But to me, this guy was utilized as a linebacker very, very often. With his size, you wouldn't think he could be. But in a nickel defense, a team that plays nickel over 70% of the time in the Detroit Lions, this is where you could see a guy have a lot of success in sub packages, okay, on third downs. And this is where he'll get his opportunities if he does defensively. When I watch him, yes, he can tackle. So you can have him out there, and in case they run it, you're not like, oh, snap, they're just going to run right towards him and it's going to be over, because it won't be. He's actually a really good tackler, so that's great. But you can put him out there on passing downs, and he can take away tight ends. One of the Lions' problems for years has been, oh, we can't cover tight ends. We don't have the linebackers to do it. Well, this offseason, the Detroit Lions didn't make a huge effort to go get coverage linebackers. Sure, Jamie Collins can, but aside from Collins, we don't really have guys that cover that well. I mean, I guess Elijah Lee's not terrible, but Ragland's a run stuffer. You brought in another one. You brought in Jelani Tavai in the draft. You brought in Jared Davis. None of those guys are good at coverage. None of them are known for coverage. Those are your run stuffers. But Detroit Lions are also bringing in these safeties that can tackle and can kind of play a little hybrid role between linebacker and safety, can come into the box so they can, you know, they'll be fine against the run. They won't be dominated against the run. But if you do pass, they can take away the tight ends. I think that's what Matt Patricia is doing. I really do. If there's one thing, if there's a reason I think they're bringing in all these secondary players, it's because he's going to utilize them like linebackers in some situations, depending on who makes the team. And he can put them out there to cover tight ends and take away running backs like that on passing downs, on third downs. But again, if it's a run play, he's not going to be left out there to dry because he's good against the run. He's so good against the run. I don't know how to explain it. All I can say is go watch him. This guy consistently makes tackles. Broken tackles just don't seem to be a thing. And the form is beautiful. The form is so beautiful, man. I mean, that's what you teach people. You teach them in practice. And he looks like he's in practice all the time. Just wrap up form, great form, bring him to the ground. It's so nice. Not a lot of broken tackles. It's great. He's not just trying to run into people, hit him as hard as he can, and all of a sudden they bounce off of him because he ain't that big. He needs to be really good with his technique, and it's great. And I think that's the reason the Lions went out and brought him in. I think that's something that, again, the Lions love. Matt Patricia loves those fundamentals. So he can cover. He's a solid coverage guy, not the most athletic, which is a huge reason he fell. Another reason he fell is because of his poor size. Like I mentioned, he's not super athletic. He's got poor size. He had that injury early in his career, which some people may be hesitant of, but in the last 3 years, he really hasn't had to deal with any injuries. He's been perfectly fine, really, since then. One thing that it was actually like knocked against him, I seen a lot of people say this, was his poor play recognition ability. I didn't really see it personally. I didn't see poor play recognition. I think against runs, he was really good at finding the angles and making the right decisions, on making the right lane decisions on where the running back or whoever the ball carrier would come from. Maybe against pass plays, maybe his play recognition isn't great. I think they talked a lot about his route defense and not knowing where routes would be coming, but that's something that you learn over time, right? You'll learn that over time in a defense as you get more experience, and he's not going to be thrown into a starter role. He's an undrafted free agent, and the Lions have 3 solid safeties already, so you won't have to really worry about that. Going back to his strengths, he played against great competition. You know, when you're at Auburn, you're playing against great competition a ton of the time. SEC may be the best football conference to go from, so if you want a guy that's been battle tested, you probably take someone from the SEC. And the great thing is this guy shows up in big moments. Against Oregon, 13 tackles. LSU, 15 tackles. Alabama, double-digit tackles. This guy shows up in big games. And that makes it not seem awesome, like, oh, tackles, that's cool and all. But tackles are so important. Like, people don't realize how important that is. Tracy Walker had over 100 tackles. And when Tracy Walker had 100 tackles, that's a big deal. That's a big deal for a safety to have 100 tackles. Think about how far they usually are off the line of scrimmage. That just shows you the versatility, because when you think of a safety, you don't think, oh, a tackling safety. You think of a guy that helps in coverage, you know, the last line of defense, maybe someone that plays a lot of different roles, a really versatile player. Safeties are super versatile, especially in Matt Patricia's defense. And a guy that tackles like this, 88 total tackles in a college season, that's really, really impressive. And the numbers don't lie when you can compare it against some of the great safeties. So I honestly don't need to make this video super long. It doesn't need to be super long. I think it's simple. I think Jeremiah Dinson is a great tackler. He's a secure run tackler, run support type of safety that also can help in coverage. And if you need him against tight ends in that kind of situation, you'll be fine. You put him out there against a slot wide receiver, you may see some problems, especially man-to-man. He's fine in the zone. He's going to be good for us. He does everything good. I wouldn't say he does anything great other than his tackling ability, but he also has some concerns that in certain defenses he wouldn't be great. If you're going to blitz a ton, if you're in a defense that blitzes often and a lot, he may not be the best player because he doesn't have tons of success when it comes to blitzing because he's just not that quick. He doesn't get back there that quick. And he also is not a guy, again, you want matched up in a really bad matchup against wide receiver because they'll just go to him over and over and over, and he'll probably struggle keeping up. But you put him in a defense like our defense that drops a lot, that against the run, you have a lot of nickel players out there that need to be able to tackle. Look at our cornerbacks. Look how many cornerbacks lines bring in that have to be able to tackle. If you can't tackle coming out of college, you're probably not going to be selected by this Matt Patricia defense. I mean, that was something that was huge with Rashawn Melvin. Rashawn Melvin's ability to tackle at the cornerback position was so underrated, but it was so important. That's a huge reason he had a big role with the Lions, even though he wasn't the best coverage guy. That's what I see with both Jalen Elliott and Jeremiah Dinson. They fit really well with this defense. And I think you put these guys on special teams with their ability to tackle. They may not be the fastest player. You don't want them returning kicks. Kickoff defense and punt defense, these are the kind of guys you want on the field to make the play, because special teams is really underrated. But someone has to bring the ball carrier down. Someone has to bring someone down that's catching it with tons of blockers ahead of him, and someone needs to bring that guy down. And when you look at these players, that's what they bring to the table. So I think they could have a role on special teams, on defense, maybe some nickel packages, maybe on passing downs or third downs, I should say. You can mix these guys in and out, right? I think they have all that versatility. The Lions love their safeties. I don't know if they'll make the team or not, but I really hope they do. I obviously root for everyone to make the team, and Jeremiah Dinson especially, because the fact that his career almost ended is insane, but obviously he fought back. That's just awesome. You love to see the fight. He came back. He didn't give up there. He came back. He fought back, and now he's with the Detroit Lions, which is perfect because there's no better team you could be on. So Jeremiah Dinson, welcome to the squad. I'm rooting for you. Who do you guys want me to talk about next? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.